The mist clung to the cemetery like a shroud, weaving between weathered tombstones as John Miller continued his 30 years of digging graves. Through the morning fog, he spotted them, two well-dressed siblings standing over their father's fresh plot, voices rising with each accusation about the will. Their expensive shoes sank into the mud as dollar figures flew between them, neither noticing John observing their ugly display of greed. He'd seen this dance before, death bringing out the worst in families. What they didn't know was that their father had shared secrets with John during his final days. Subscribe to find out what John knows that will silence their inheritance battle forever. John Miller's calloused hands gripped the shovel with practiced ease, his weathered face bearing the lines of a man who had spent 3 decades in communion with the dead. The cemetery was his domain, a place where others feared to linger, but where he found a peculiar peace. As a gravedigger, John understood the final equality that death brought to all, regardless of the wealth they accumulated or the power they wielded in life. Behind his stoic exterior lay a wound that had never properly healed. 5 years ago, his own brother had passed, and John had dug that grave with tears blurring his vision. They had parted on bitter terms over a small family heirloom, a pocket watch that held more sentimental than monetary value. The argument seemed so trivial now, but they had never reconciled before his brother's sudden heart attack. This regret shadowed John daily, making him particularly sensitive to family disputes around graves. All John wanted was to perform his duties with dignity and perhaps, in some small way, help the bereaved find closure, something he himself still sought. He took pride in creating perfect final resting places, treating each plot with reverence regardless of the headstone's grandeur. The siblings' heated argument violated the sanctity of this space. The sister, Rebecca Thornton, a corporate lawyer in an immaculate suit, jabbed her manicured finger at her brother Michael, whose tech entrepreneur status was evident in his casual yet expensive attire. "Dad promised me the lake house. It's been my second home for years," Michael shouted. "The will clearly states it's to be liquidated with the rest of the estate," Rebecca countered coldly. When John approached to continue his work, Rebecca noticed him and her expression shifted to one of disdain. "We're having a private conversation," she said loudly. "Perhaps you could dig elsewhere for now?" Michael snickered. "Yeah, this is family business, not something the help needs to concern himself with." Their dismissal stung, reducing John's decades of honorable service to mere help. The cemetery had been his life's work, and he had comforted countless mourners with quiet dignity. Now, these entitled siblings were treating him as invisible, just as their father had warned they might do to anyone they deemed beneath them. John stood silently, absorbing their contempt. He could have walked away, but something about their callousness toward their father's memory kept him rooted to the spot. "Actually," Rebecca continued, turning to her brother but speaking loudly enough for John to hear, "Dad wasted so much time talking to the staff here. Remember how we found him chatting with this gentleman when we came to select the plot, probably telling his life story to anyone who'd listen." Michael rolled his eyes. Classic dad, always getting chummy with the wrong people. No wonder his business nearly tanked before I stepped in. John tightened his grip on the shovel, his knuckles whitening. He had indeed spoken with their father, Harold Thornton, many times over the past year. The old man had come to the cemetery often, preparing for what he called the inevitable, selecting his plot with care and sitting on the nearby bench for hours, sometimes bringing coffee for John. "I need to continue preparing the adjacent plot," John said quietly. "Cemetery regulations." Rebecca's phone rang, and she answered immediately, holding up a finger to silence John. "Yes, I'm handling it now. The estate valuation should be complete by Friday." She covered the phone briefly. "Can you just go somewhere else? This is an important call about the estate." John took a step back, but remained within earshot as the siblings continued their dispute, now dragging their father's business partners and other relatives into their accusations. Their voices carried across the peaceful cemetery, disturbing the respectful silence John had always maintained. When Rebecca finished her call, she noticed John still nearby and approached him, her heels sinking into the soft earth. "Look," she said, pulling out her wallet, "here's $50. Take an early lunch or something." She held out the bill as if offering a treat to a dog. The insult cut deeper than any shovel could dig. In 30 years, John had never accepted tips for doing his job with dignity. He stared at the money but didn't move to take it. Michael joined them, chuckling. My sister's being generous. Most people in your position would be grateful. I don't accept gratuities for sacred work, John replied evenly. Rebecca's face hardened. Sacred? You dig holes in the ground. Let's not pretend it's brain surgery. She tucked the money back into her wallet. Fine. Then I'll speak with your supervisor about your interference with mourning family members. Yeah, Michael added, pulling out his phone. I'm friends with 2 board members of this cemetery. One call, and you could be looking for a new place to play with dirt. The threat hung in the air between them. John had never faced such blatant disrespect in all his years of service. These siblings were not just arguing over inheritance. They were weaponizing their privilege against anyone who stood in their way. What they didn't realize was that John Miller wasn't just any gravedigger. Before taking this job, a position he'd chosen deliberately for its peace and purpose, he had been Harold Thornton's personal attorney for 15 years. He had left his legal practice after a crisis of conscience, seeking a simpler life with more meaningful work. Only Harold had recognized him when he came to plan his burial, and they had rekindled their friendship in the old man's final months. John knew every detail of Harold's will, including the secret codicil that would activate if his children behaved exactly as they were doing now. He also knew that Harold had recorded their final conversation, documenting his fears about his children's character and his hopes for their redemption. John said nothing about this as he quietly returned to his work, letting the siblings continue their bitter battle. Their father had given him specific instructions about when to reveal what he knew. That time wasn't now, but it would come soon enough. A tall woman in an expensive charcoal suit observed from beneath a nearby oak tree. Cemetery Director Eleanor Walsh narrowed her eyes, making a note in her leather-bound portfolio before speaking quietly into her phone. Her presence alone shifted the atmosphere of the confrontation. John watched the siblings walk away, their heated whispers carrying on the breeze. He leaned on his shovel, the weight of Harold's secret heavy on his conscience. For 3 years, he had embraced the simplicity of tending to the final resting places of the departed, finding more peace in this honest labor than he ever had in the cutthroat world of corporate law. But today, Harold Thornton's voice echoed in his memory. When the time comes, John, you'll know. My children might surprise us all, but if they don't, Harold had said during their last meeting, his withered hand gripping John's with surprising strength. John glanced toward the oak tree where Eleanor Walsh still stood, her attention now fixed on her phone. He had always appreciated the cemetery director's quiet authority and unwavering respect for both the living and the dead. Unlike the Thornton siblings, Eleanor understood the sacred nature of this place. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, John finished his work at Harold's grave, smoothing the disturbed earth with practiced hands. He gathered his tools and headed toward the maintenance shed, his decision crystallizing with each step. The time had come. In the small office adjacent to the shed, John unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. From beneath a stack of maintenance logs, he retrieved a sealed envelope, Harold's contingency plan. Inside was a USB drive and a letter with explicit instructions. John had promised to wait at least until after the funeral, and he had kept that promise. He powered up the ancient desktop computer and inserted the drive. A single video file appeared on the screen. John hesitated only briefly before clicking play. Harold Thornton's face filled the screen, gaunt but clear-eyed, recorded just 2 weeks before his passing. "This is my final testament," Harold began, his voice stronger than his appearance suggested. "If you're watching this, John has determined that my worst fears about my children have been realized." John paused the video and pulled out his phone. He composed a simple text message to both Rebecca and Michael Thornton. "Mr. Harold Thornton left something important in my care. Cemetery office, 9 a.m. tomorrow. John Miller, groundskeeper." He pressed send before he could reconsider, then called Eleanor Walsh. "Eleanor? John Miller here. I need to use the conference room tomorrow morning. It's about the Thornton matter." "I had a feeling," Eleanor replied. "I saw their behavior today. Disgraceful. The room is yours. Do you need me there?" "If you wouldn't mind," John said. "This might get complicated." The next morning, John arrived early, dressed not in his usual work clothes, but in a simple dark suit he hadn't worn in years. He set up the conference room, connecting Harold's USB drive to the projector system. At precisely 9 a.m., the Thornton siblings arrived, Rebecca in designer business attire, Michael in casual luxury, where that probably cost more than John's monthly salary. Their expressions shifted from annoyance to confusion when they saw John in his suit. "What's this about?" Rebecca demanded. "We have a meeting with the estate lawyers at 11. Please, sit down." John gestured to the chairs. "There's something your father wanted you to see." "Our father?" Michael scoffed. "What would he have given to the gravedigger?" "Not the gravedigger," came Eleanor Walsh's voice as she entered the room. "John Miller was your father's personal attorney for 15 years before he chose a different path." The siblings' expressions froze in shock. That's impossible," Rebecca stammered. John smiled slightly. "Harold recognized me 3 years ago when he came to arrange his burial plot. We rekindled our friendship during his final months." "This is ridiculous," Michael said, half rising from his chair. "You expect us to believe." "Harvard Law, class of 98, John interrupted. "Senior partner at Caldwell, Miller, and Thornton until 2020. Your father was my mentor, Michael. I drafted your prenuptial agreement when you married Vanessa." Michael sank back into his chair, his face pale. "Your father recorded a message," John continued, turning to the projector. "He asked me to show it to you only if certain conditions were met." The video began playing. Harold Thornton's face appeared on screen, addressing his children directly. "Rebecca, Michael, if you're watching this, it means you've already begun fighting over what I've left behind rather than honoring what I tried to teach you in life. John was instructed to show you this only if you demonstrated greed and disrespect after my passing." The siblings sat in stunned silence as their father detailed his disappointment in their materialistic values and the competitive resentment that had grown between them. "I built my company from nothing, not so you could tear each other apart over its remains, but so you could build something meaningful of your own," Harold continued. "I've watched you both become strangers to the values I tried to instill." Then came the revelation that made Rebecca gasp audibly. "Therefore, I've added a codicil to my will, which John has already filed with the probate court. If you continue on this path, fighting over my estate like vultures, the majority of my wealth, 80%, will go to the charitable foundation I established last year. You'll each receive a modest trust that pays out monthly, enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly." Michael's face flushed with anger. "He can't do that. We'll contest it." However, Harold continued as if anticipating his son's reaction. "If within 30 days of my funeral, you demonstrate that you can work together harmoniously, support each other as siblings should, and show respect for those who serve others without seeking personal gain, like my friend John, then the original will stand, and you'll inherit as planned." The video ended with Harold's gentle smile. "I hope you choose wisely. I love you both, despite everything." The room fell silent. Rebecca's mascara had begun to run, while Michael stared at the blank screen, jaw clenched. "This is blackmail," Michael finally said. "And you," he pointed at John. "You've been spying on us for what?" "A cut of the inheritance." John shook his head. "I received nothing either way. Your father was my friend. I'm simply honoring his wishes." "He's telling the truth," Eleanor interjected. "I've known John for years. He left a lucrative career because he wanted work with more meaning. He's the most honest man I know." Rebecca dabbed at her eyes. "So what now? We pretend to be best friends for a month and then go back to normal?" "That's entirely up to you," John replied. "But your father hoped this would be a turning point, not a temporary act." As the siblings processed this information, Eleanor discreetly placed a hand on John's shoulder, a small gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by Rebecca. "The cemetery board fully supports John in this matter," Eleanor added. "Any threats against his position here would be unwise." Michael stood abruptly. "I need to call my lawyer." "That's your right," John acknowledged. "But remember, your father's instructions are already legally filed. The clock is ticking." As the siblings gathered their belongings to leave, John added one final comment, the sentence that would change everything. "Your father told me his greatest regret wasn't his business failures or missed opportunities, but that he couldn't find a way to help you both remember how much you loved each other as children." Rebecca froze at the door, her hand trembling slightly. Michael stopped mid-text, looking up with an expression John couldn't quite read. He kept a photo album in his study. John continued softly. "He showed me pictures of you two building sandcastles together, defending them against the tide. He said it was the perfect metaphor for what he hoped you'd become, allies against life's inevitable challenges, not competitors." Something shifted in the air between the siblings, a momentary softening, a flicker of shared memory. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Miller," Rebecca said finally, her tone markedly different from the previous day. As they left, Eleanor turned to John. "Well played, counselor." John smiled wearily. Not a counselor anymore. Just a man keeping a promise to a friend. "Sometimes the most important work happens with a shovel, sometimes with the truth," Eleanor replied. "Either way, you've planted something today. Let's see what grows." What did you think of this story? Comment below and let us know where you're watching from. The next morning, John found an envelope on his desk containing photos of him with Harold in a heated argument weeks before his death, along with a threatening note. "Drop the inheritance conditions, or everyone learns what really happened that day." John stared at the photos, his hands trembling slightly. The images showed him and Harold in what appeared to be a heated argument at the edge of the cemetery grounds. Harold's finger jabbing at John's chest, their faces contorted with emotion. Without context, it looked damning, especially with Harold's death following shortly after. The note's implication was clear. Someone believed John had something to do with Harold's death, or at least wanted others to think so. Eleanor found him still staring at the photos 20 minutes later. "John, you look like you've seen a ghost." He wordlessly handed her the envelope. Her expression darkened as she examined the contents. "Blackmail," she said flatly. "Who would do this?" "Someone who doesn't want Michael and Rebecca to reconcile," John replied. "Someone with a vested interest in keeping them at odds." "Harold's lawyer? Business partners?" John shook his head. "I'm not sure, but I need to find out before this derails everything." Eleanor placed her hand over his. "We need to find out. I'm not letting you face this alone." Over the next 3 days, John and Eleanor worked methodically. They reviewed cemetery visitor logs, security camera footage, and spoke discreetly with Harold's household staff. A pattern began to emerge, centered around Harold's financial advisor, Vincent Mercer. Mercer's firm manages both siblings' investments, Eleanor noted, reviewing the information they'd gathered in John's modest office. And according to Harold's housekeeper, he was a frequent visitor in the weeks before Harold died. Harold mentioned having concerns about him, John recalled. Said he was pushing investment strategies that seemed designed to pit Michael and Rebecca against each other. "Divide and conquer," Eleanor mused. "If they're fighting, they're not paying attention to how their money is being managed." John nodded grimly. "And if they reconcile, they might compare notes and discover discrepancies." The plan they formulated was risky. John would invite both siblings to meet at Harold's grave under the pretense of sharing additional information about their father's wishes. Meanwhile, Eleanor would ensure Vincent Mercer learned of the meeting. "He'll come to observe," John predicted. "He'll want to know if his blackmail worked. And if it doesn't," Eleanor asked, "then we'll be ready." The day of the meeting arrived with ominous dark clouds gathering overhead. John arrived early, placing flowers on Harold's grave while discreetly checking the small recording device in his pocket. Eleanor positioned herself at a respectful distance, pretending to tend to nearby graves. Michael arrived first, his expensive car purring to a stop on the cemetery's main drive. "This better be important, Miller," he said, approaching with hands thrust deep in his coat pockets. "I've got a board meeting in 2 hours." "It is," John assured him. "We just need to wait for your sister." Rebecca arrived minutes later, her face tense but composed. "Michael," she acknowledged with a nod. "Rebecca," John cleared his throat. "Thank you both for coming. I wanted to meet here because this is where your father rests, and I think he'd want to witness what I'm about to tell you." He took a deep breath, aware of a dark sedan that had just parked at the far end of the cemetery. A figure remained inside, watching. "The truth is, your father and I did argue before his death," John began, noting how both siblings stiffened. "He was concerned about financial irregularities he discovered in both your accounts. He believed someone was manipulating your investments to create artificial competition between you." Michael frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Your financial advisor, Vincent Mercer. Harold discovered he was showing each of you different projections, convincing you both that the other was gaining financial advantage." Rebecca's eyes widened. "That's exactly what he's been telling me about you," Michael finished, turning to his sister. John nodded. Harold confronted him, threatened to expose him. 3 days later, Harold was dead from his heart attack. "Are you suggesting?" Rebecca began. "I'm not suggesting anything," John interrupted. "But someone sent me these." He handed them the photos, along with a threat to implicate me in your father's death if I didn't drop the reconciliation conditions of his will. As the siblings examined the photos, John noticed the sedan's door opening. Vincent Mercer stepped out, walking purposefully toward them. "He's here," John whispered. Michael and Rebecca turned to see Mercer approaching, his practiced smile faltering as he realized all three were watching him. "Vincent," Michael called out. "Perfect timing. We were just discussing you." Mercer's smile disappeared completely. "I was just paying respects to an old client. I didn't realize you'd be here." "Funny coincidence," Rebecca said coldly. "Especially since we didn't tell anyone about this meeting." Mercer's eyes darted between them, then fixed on the photos in Michael's hand. "What's that you've got there?" "Evidence of blackmail," John stated firmly. "The same photos you sent to my office with a threatening note." "That's absurd," Mercer sputtered. "I don't know what you're talking about." Eleanor approached from behind, startling him. "The cemetery has security cameras, Mr. Mercer. We have footage of you entering John's office after hours the night before he received these." It was a bluff. The cameras didn't cover John's office, but Mercer didn't know that. "You've been playing us against each other for years," Michael said, advancing toward Mercer. "Why? What did you gain?" "Nothing. I've only ever acted in your best interests. By showing us different projections? By convincing each of us the other was trying to undermine our inheritance," Rebecca demanded. Mercer's composure cracked. "Your father was going to consolidate all accounts under a different firm. I would have lost millions in management fees." The admission hung in the air. John felt a grim satisfaction, but also dread at what might come next. "Did you kill our father?" Michael asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Mercer's face drained of color. "No, I would never. It was his heart. Everyone knows he had a condition. A condition that was well managed," Rebecca countered. "Until suddenly, it wasn't." John stepped between them and Mercer, who looked ready to bolt. "We have two choices now," he said firmly. "We call the police and let them investigate Mr. Mercer's potential involvement in your father's death, or—" He looked at the siblings, seeing the raw pain and anger in their eyes. "Or what?" Michael demanded. John took a deep breath. "Or you two work together to unravel exactly what he's done to your accounts, build a case, and ensure he never works in finance again." The siblings exchanged a long look, years of mistrust battling with the fresh revelation of how they'd been manipulated. "What would Dad want?" Rebecca asked softly. The choice hung in the air between them as thunder rumbled overhead. The thunder cracked overhead as Michael and Rebecca stood shoulder to shoulder, their father's grave behind them like a silent witness to this moment of reckoning. Vincent Mercer's confident facade had completely crumbled, revealing the desperate man beneath. "Dad would want justice," Michael said finally, "but he'd want us to be smart about it." Rebecca nodded. "He always said revenge is satisfying for a moment, but strategy pays dividends for a lifetime." Mercer attempted to regain control. "You have no proof of anything criminal. These photos only show me visiting your father's home. I was his financial advisor for 20 years. "True," John interjected, "but financial advisors don't typically access their clients' medication cabinets, do they?" Eleanor stepped forward, producing another photograph from her pocket. This one, unlike John's bluff about security footage, was genuine, showing Mercer at the old man's medicine cabinet, clearly handling prescription bottles. "Your father's housekeeper took this," Eleanor explained. "She thought it odd, but didn't say anything until I asked her directly last week." Mercer's face went ashen. "That proves nothing. I was helping organize his medications." "Which explains why his heart medication was replaced with similar-looking pills?" Rebecca asked, her voice ice cold. "The autopsy didn't catch it because no one suspected foul play, but Dad's personal physician noted the irregularity in his private records." This was another calculated bluff, but Mercer's reaction, a visible tremor in his hands and beads of sweat forming on his forehead, told them everything. "Here's what's going to happen," Michael said, stepping forward. "You're going to sign a full confession about the financial manipulation. You'll return every penny you've stolen through inflated fees and fraudulent projections. You'll surrender your licenses and never work in finance again." "And in exchange?" Mercer asked, his voice barely audible. "We don't pursue the investigation into our father's death," Rebecca answered. "Not because you deserve mercy, but because a lengthy murder trial would tarnish Dad's legacy and the company he built." John watched as the siblings, united by grief and betrayal, dismantled the man who had driven them apart. There was something poetic about it. Mercer's own greed had created the circumstances of his downfall. "You have 24 hours to prepare complete documentation of your fraud," Michael continued. "Eleanor will accompany you to ensure nothing is destroyed or hidden." Mercer looked desperately between them. You can't do this. I'll be ruined. Yes, Rebecca said simply. You will be. As Eleanor escorted a defeated Mercer away, the siblings turned back to their father's grave. The rain had started to fall, gentle drops that seemed to wash away some of the tension between them. I'm sorry, Michael said quietly to Rebecca, for believing the worst about you. I'm sorry too, she replied. We should have trusted each other more than we trusted him. John stepped back, giving them space for this moment of reconciliation. The justice being served wasn't perfect. A man who may have committed murder would escape that particular charge. But watching the siblings standing together, beginning to heal their relationship, felt like a different kind of justice. Later, as they walked back toward their cars, the rain now falling steadily, John reflected on how quickly fortunes could change. Vincent Mercer had arrived that morning, a wealthy, respected financial advisor. He was leaving a disgraced man facing professional ruin and financial devastation. Thank you, Rebecca said to John as they reached the cemetery gates. Not just for today, but for forcing us to confront each other in the first place. Your father knew what he was doing, John replied. He understood that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, but truth. The three of them looked back at the cemetery one last time before departing, the rain washing clean the path behind them. The following morning, John returned to his duties at the cemetery, the events of the previous day still vivid in his mind. The familiar weight of his shovel felt different somehow, lighter, perhaps. As he tended to the grounds, he noticed the freshly turned earth at Mr. Harrison's grave, now adorned with flowers from both Rebecca and Michael. Life had a way of continuing, regardless of the dramas that unfolded. John found comfort in that predictability as he resumed his daily routine, checking the grounds, maintaining the markers, preparing new sites. Yet something had shifted within him. During his lunch break, he unfolded the local newspaper to find a small article about Vincent Mercer's sudden resignation from his financial firm. No mention of fraud or the confrontation, just a sanitized corporate statement. John smiled knowingly. That evening, as dusk settled over the cemetery, John locked the maintenance shed and prepared to head home. A sleek black car pulled up to the gates. The window rolled down, revealing an elderly woman with piercing eyes. Are you the gravedigger? She asked, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't place. I am, John replied cautiously. She extended a sealed envelope. Then you're the one I need. There's another family that requires your particular wisdom. As John accepted the envelope, he noticed an unusual insignia pressed into the wax seal, identical to a symbol he'd recently spotted on one of the cemetery's oldest tombstones. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more compelling narratives, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What family secrets would you want a gravedigger to help uncover?